going for back to school so far, and then let's pick up from there.
Yes, sir. So what happened was I talked about that at one school, I'm going to be in five elementary schools with Meet the Teacher. And then at the other school, I'm going to be with three with Meet the Teacher. And then I said that in addition to that, we're of course doing our online marketing, our yard signs, our rack cards. And I was asking like, just for what are some of the other things we should make sure we're doing. And by the way, I've taken a note since that I should also just make sure best offer. I'm just doing the 2 weeks free through everything, but I
Yeah.
wanted to ask about that. And then one of the things you kind of talked about yesterday already is that, because what I'm doing is I'm registering people for the uh, for a seminar for it's basically a first intro, and you gave me some advice about making sure that we don't add an extra step and making sure that we get them directly into a trial program as quickly as possible and such. And so that was kind of where, and I told my wife, who's also sitting here, I said, I want to make sure I'm on this thing today because he gave me all that information. And then he said, make sure you're on the market call tomorrow. We'll go over this.
He
So
Yeah.
yelled at me when I came in.
yeah,
He
she
said,
came in trying to talk about different things. I'm like, no, I got
busy.
Yeah, the subtext of that, Stephen, is we have the Wednesday marketing meeting. Then we have the Thursday that covers sales closing ratios, tuition pricing, and more marketing.
Yes.
And then we have the Tuesday meeting, which predominantly should be focused on long-term student retention, renewal, staff growth and development, and then more sophisticated areas from that. So
And that renewal training that you went into yesterday was awesome. And I thought that each one of the three of you actually provided something very specific that should be part of a three-part system, right? Like, and it was all very, very, like, we've been with you 5 years now and getting better all the time, but I felt like there was a lot of things we were missing that came out in yesterday's training. So it's
Yeah.
mandatory rewatching for all of us.
Well, rotating curriculum, whether it be for renewal or whether it be for just teaching, is a very difficult thing for people to get the concept until they've got it, and then it just seems like as natural as it could be, right? But I don't know what it is. Any number of people I've tried to get to do that, including the former world champion here with us, took them forever to get the idea, to understand it. And usually it's kind of if it's not broke, don't fix it. But, it's kind of, the current analogy is all these AI tools that are coming out, you know, in most places, they're not replacing a human being, but they're making you be able to do 10 hours worth of stuff in 1 hour, right? So it's it's a high leverage point. And the same thing is getting that stuff together. So for back to school, when are the schools actually going back in session for you in Florida?
Well, next week is the Meet the Teacher stuff, and the very next week they're already back in school.
So very much like the schedule here in Colorado, which always seems damn early to me. I don't know. Yeah, that's exactly right. It keeps saying earlier and earlier. The so what you have with all of this stuff, and when you start with the Meet the Teacher thing, let's explain that. Is most, maybe not all, but most of the schools have some version of a day and time when the parents can come down with the kids, so therefore tends to be late afternoon, evening, where they can meet the teachers, see their classroom, and in most cases, I won't say all, but in most cases, it's kind of tied into the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts are there, and maybe the soccer club. It depends upon what level you're at. If you're high school level, have all the different clubs and so forth. And if you're at the elementary age, it's maybe some of the recreational things and so forth that they can do. But it's a time when people can come in and just get back to school, literally. But it's not a class, it's not a school day. It's usually a day or two before school. And the way you line it up is you've got to figure out when the administration and the admin, but the all the administration, you got to figure out when they're back in school. What I find around here is the teachers typically have a week to maybe 2 weeks before classes start that they have to be back in. The, front office maybe is 3 weeks, and the principals and so forth maybe is 3 weeks. So it's, again, every district and probably every individual school, but definitely every district's going to be a little different. But that's the time when you can go in and if you haven't done this already, what I mean by that is, if we build a good relationship with the school, this is something we should have set up in the spring so that we are ready for back to school. And with things like the after school enrichment programs, my rule of thumb was, in the spring, I wanted to set up the fall, and the fall, I wanted to set up the spring, right? So I wasn't going in trying to set something up for next week. I was trying to, always get it as far in advance as possible. But if you haven't done that already, for anybody, is you've just got to figure out when they get back to school. And the best time possible to be talking to the PE teacher, the principal, all of the admin, is when school's in session yet, right? Because they don't have the kids there. So, you can get their undivided attention. And a lot of the districts are doing, like I remember for the city and county of Boulder, I went and did a presentation for all of the PE teachers because they were doing 2 or 3 days of training before school went back in session. I've done the same thing for principals in different districts. So it's a time when you can go get in front of all of the PE teachers, the principals, or different groups while they're doing what they refer to as in-service training, just training days. But you can also then set up these back to school days. And the back to school day, really all you're doing is you're doing the same thing as the soccer club and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, is you're just setting up a table in the school.
Yeah.
Our conversation yesterday was about the prize wheel or not using the prize wheel and so forth. The basic live event, structure that we know works is the big prize wheel, maybe some floor standing banners, a nice table or nice cloth on the table, maybe a TV to get attention. But the rationale for the prize wheel is to get some reason for people to come from across the room over to the booth, right? It's just the easiest way to get them to the booth. And again, Master Moody said it this way, is just always plan on the live event setup, the scripting, the handouts you're going to have, everything just always being the same, right? Because that way you're training the staff, you're not retraining them for each different thing they're doing. And the only exception I made was I've heard a lot of the schools doing these programs, including it's been a while now, but the last one that I was at with one of our schools is we didn't need the prize wheel because they just had all the parents and the kids come into the gym, line up, and then go by every table. And so it was just they went table to table. In that one, we made 85 appointments in 2 hours, and they were frankly much better as far as show and conversion than I'm out at a fair or a carnival or a movie theater or something like that, because they knew in part that they were there looking at what activities are we going to do for the fall, and what are we looking at, right? So that's what we're talking about, and so the single biggest thing that any school can do to generate a huge flow of leads, not necessarily a consistent flow, but a huge flood of leads, is something like these after school program or these back to school days, where, if you have 20 schools in your area, they're all doing one. So if you got into 10 of them, or you got into 12 of them, 50 appointments per school, you've got 500 or 600 appointments, right? The only problem is going to be is you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to have hard time getting around to doing all the confirmations, hard time getting around to keeping track of the intros properly. That's the only problem. Is we've had schools that got 600 appointments and 150 enrollments, and you want to bitch at them about the ratios, but you can't, because it's like, well, oh my goodness, in 1 month we did 150 enrollments. What are you going to do, right? So that's that idea. But Stephen, what we were talking about yesterday is,
Master Oliver, not to cut you off, but just on that train of thought you were saying, that's what Jan did. And I think she was at 14 schools, and that got her about 120 enrollments. And that was in a 4 to 6 week period.
yeah, very quickly.
Okay, so you do 7 schools and you get 70. Who cares? You do 5 and you get 40. Who cares? You gotta do it. And The thing is, doing all of these school programs, don't judge the book by the first time you go, because you'll make mistakes. You won't do it the right way sometimes. Occasionally we have somebody do it the first time and it's a home run. Other times they do it. Make sure that you are really tracking the numbers so you can see how the conversions are going down, and find out where where it didn't work, so you can figure out how to make it better the next time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but where we left off, Stephen, yesterday was, what's the list and what else can you do, right? So, let's go through as comprehensively as we can. Is, if we're back to school, one of the first things that I was always focused on is generating 1,000 leads over the summer, right? So June, July, August is pretty easy to do that. You have daycares, you have summer camps, you have movie theaters, blockbusters, you have all the different stuff that you can do. But regardless of how many you have created so far, what you do know is, hopefully in an organized CRM somewhere, but maybe it's just stacks of paper on the, I had one school, they had 5,000 pieces of paper of, lead forms that people had filled out. Well, that's okay. We scanned them all, sent them over to some guy in the Philippines who data entered them for 25 cents a piece, and we were good to go, right? But what we start with is we look at everybody who we've touched, meaning they went to the website, they opted in, they came in for an intro, filled out the information, never enrolled. We were at a live event and we collected their information, but every lead that we have, right? Plus, we look at every student that we've lost. So you start with your inactive students. So everybody, whether they were enrolled for a year and dropped out in 6 weeks, or whether they were enrolled to black belt and got to blue belt, but we look at all of the students that have faded away, and we look at everyone who has raised their hand. And on the flakier side, that's people who opted in on Facebook or Google, and we never got any further. And on the most solid side, they came in for the full introductory program and just for one reason or another, they didn't enroll right then and there. It was, the excuse was either time or money. And keep in mind, people's financial situation changes month to month. So it's not, if they couldn't afford it in March, they can't afford it now. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they were temporarily unemployed, blew the transmission out in the car. Grandma had a bunch of unexpected legal or medical expenses. There's all kinds of reasons why they may not have. So what the starting point is all of our current leads, and then going back at least a year or two. And how effective it is going further back depends upon whether you kept the leads warmed up or not. Meaning, if they're getting an email every day and they were getting a postcard a couple times a month, and periodically we were doing outbound calls, that's keeping the leads warm. They remember who we are, or that we've been dripping on them over the time period. The ones that we didn't keep warm, it's almost the same as just mailing to the household across the street. A little bit more about them. They have a 7-year-old child or whatever it is, but it's not much different than that. That's the reason for constant communication, right? So what we want to do is start with going back to all of the leads we've collected. How far back we go, in part depends upon how good a job we've been doing keeping them, warmed up. But I would go at least 2 or 3 years and hit all of them. And how do I hit all of them? Well, number one, I make sure I'm emailing them every day. Number two, I make sure that I'm texting them the back to school offer. Number three, I'm doing ringless voicemail. So I'm recording a message and it goes straight into their voicemail. Number four, I'm putting a crew on doing outbound calls. And so I want to make sure I'm doing all of that stuff and that I'm doing sequential direct mail. So, if it were me, you're going to judge it based upon how many of them you have and how far back you go. But if you have a list of 2,000 with name, address, and phone number and email address, well, let's do, 2,000 mailers at least 3 or 4 times to that list, right? And again, it's the mistake that everybody makes. They they go, well, I'm going to try out this direct mail thing you're talking about. Then they go the opposite end of the spectrum and they start with something like every door direct mail, or they buy a compiled list. No, no, no. Where we start with is every new opt-in, we use direct mail to help convert them to appointment, convert them to enrollment. And then we use every new enrollment, we use direct mail to reactivate people who have faded out of class, to prep for the renewal, that type of thing. Next, we go to people who've come in for an intro and didn't enroll. Next, we go to leads and work on converting to appointment. Next, we go to, older leads. And then the last thing we do is very targeted direct mail. And the more targeted, the better. I mean, one of the most successful cold direct mail pieces I ever did was, several students brought me in their school directory, and I did a letter from them to the students at the school referencing their child, inviting them to come down to a free introductory class, including their name and address as the return address on the envelope. Worked great. I think we had the envelopes and address, by the way. So you see where you start. So Stephen, where we're at right now is you're doing these back to school days, and the more of those you can get, the better. What you're going to want to do is make sure, just like any other live event, that everybody you talk to, you capture name, address, phone number, email address, mailing address, and you make the appointment on the spot. So you should be at 80 to 100% on making appointments. Certainly you will be by now, but if somebody's new, you got to make sure you're following the scripting. Then what you do is you make sure that, you're texting, email, using something like Schedule Once to confirm the appointment, getting direct mail in the mail to them the minute, I mean, we used to have postcards that we would address while we were on downtime, or address after the event and put in the mailbox that night, right? Is, straight out in the mail. So you use multi-step direct mail to make sure they're going to, either make an appointment or come in. And then the next step is, from there, is we go back to all the leads we generate over the summer, but then we go back a year, or go back 2 years, or go back 3 years, figure out the numbers that we're comfortable with. But we, if it were me, I'd mail them 6 times, right? Mail them, the 2 weeks before school goes back in session, a week before they go back in session, the week they go back in session, and just boom, 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 boom. And again, if it's budgetary constrained, I'd rather take the 500 more recent and mail them 5 times than take 2,500 and mail them once, right? So I'm always going to go with repetition, and I'm going to go with recency. So the more recently they raised their hand and came into my pipeline, that, they're more likely to remember who I am. So that was number 2, Stephen, is really
Before
going.
you go on to number 3, Master
Go
Oliver,
ahead.
one of the things that you said is to make sure that you get their contact information and hopefully make an appointment. But, I remember Jan, she had, because she was at 14 schools, and sometimes it wasn't all 14 on the same day. She was lucky enough that they were spread over a few days, but she didn't have enough spin wheels. So what she started doing, instead of the ones that she didn't have a spin wheel for, because she didn't want to buy 14 spin wheels or a dozen spin wheels, what she did is had a drawing for a school book bag. And she had a couple of them, like 2 or 3, I don't remember exactly. And they had all kinds of school supplies and stuff in there that the elementary kids need, that they have to have for school. And so what she said on the sign that she had there is enter the drawing for the free book bags. And everybody who registers will also receive 2 weeks free martial arts classes and a free uniform. And so now that's the excuse. Some people will say, oh, I'm not good at drawings, I never can win. But everybody who fills out the slip will win, because they'll get the 2 weeks and a free uniform. And that's going to be a $300 value, or whatever number you're going to put on it. And that will help, make sure that you get those leads at that live event. And then right there on that slip that they're filling out, you're going to have your appointment schedule that we have these on our circle group, where you can go in and see what that slip looks like. And there's your intro schedule. You have to do your own, what days you're going to have it. Then all they do is circle it. And then I always like to give them our business card And on the back of it, their appointment for that first intro. Master Oliver was always very good. It also, with that card, and I don't know if he used the card or not.
I never
gave
used a
him
card. We gave them a big
intro
ass packet.
He gave them a packet of information so they could look at something. Some of our schools are very good with their, what we call the tour of the school intro, a video that you can give them a link to on that printed material so they can actually click on it and see your school and see what's going on. And that helps you get your appointments or gets them to show up better. So keep that in mind, that it's not just getting in front of a bunch of those people. And if I don't make any appointments at the event, I'm going to be crazy trying to get 100 or 200 appointments on over the phone or texting or calling them over the next few weeks, where if I can get the appointment then I can make it work a lot better.
Yeah, and the thing that you didn't mention, Master Smith, is the important thing now is to get your contact information into their mobile phone. So make sure, and there's any number of ways to do it. There's, the little business cards where they can just tap it. It's near field communication. You can put a little sign thing on your table and have them tap it. I've even seen them as wristbands, and they can tap their wristband. They can certainly tap phone to phone. There you go.
There you go.
There you
Good
go.
job, Master Castillo.
But but it's important to get your school's name, your email address, your phone number, and your mailing address into their phone. What happens is several things. Number one is when you're calling to confirm, people ignore unknown callers. So now, if they ignore you, they know that they're ignoring you, but at least they know who it is calling. And it whitelist the email getting through, so it's less likely to go into the marketing or spam folder if you're in their database. It's less likely for the text not to go through. Master Smith and I both have our iPhone set up where if it's an unknown number, it doesn't notify of the text. It doesn't ring through on the when it calls. So what you want to do is you want to be in their contact record, and the explanation is really simple. Here, tap this. Now you have all of our contact information. Hit add to contacts. So when you're driving down to the school, all you have to do is hit it, and you can map or Google Maps to get there. If you have any questions, you have the phone number there. You have the email address. By the way, you can text us at that number. So it's an easy communication. But moving around, Fahad, you had a question. Feel free to just jump in of how to do the ringless voicemail.
Sorry, I don't like to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. I am not as up to speed yet as I'd like on Go High Level, but I think
I'll ask
it
them.
will. I think it will do it to the best of my knowledge. But if it will not, we use and recommend a different app called Call Loop. And what Call Loop will do is it'll do live answer voicemail. So in other words, the person answers the phone, it'll do a robocall, which for your own students is fine. For cold leads is going to get you into a little bit of trouble. But with a live answer, it can say, hi, this is so and so, the instructor at wherever. We have the tournament coming up. If you'll dial 1 right now, you can talk to Mrs. Smith at the front desk, and she can make sure she has you confirmed for it. We have the bell testing set for this Saturday, and we just needed to confirm a couple details. If you'll hit 1, it'll dial you to Susie, and she'll confirm all that stuff. That type of thing where they live answer, and then you can dial it back. The ringless voicemail is another function where you can tell it, don't live answer, do ringless voicemail. And what it'll do is, in most cases, not ring their phone, but it'll go directly to leaving a voicemail. And that's a mechanism that you can use with older leads. You're not going to get people mad that it's a robocall if they couldn't even tell it's a robocall, right? So, and again, you don't with that, you leave the message of, hi, this is Stephen Oliver, my Christ, sorry I missed you. I was just wanting to follow up with and let you know. You always make it sound like you're just sitting on there on the phone.
But that could be for absentee calls too, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
And real quick, Master Oliver, can you advise us on the frequency or the sequence of SMS and calls for old leads. The cadence, sorry, that's what I mean. Once a week, call them. Once every couple of weeks, call them.
I think it more depends upon seasonality. If so, let's say I have leads that are a year old. Well, what I know is back to school is a big time for people to be doing something. January is a big time for people to be looking for a new activity. Summer is a big time for people to do an activity. So those are times that we'll set somebody down and, way through 2,000 leads, start at the top, work our way to the bottom, start at the top, work our way to the bottom, and just keep working through them. How frequently you do it, on an ongoing basis, what I would say is this is all of your old leads, anytime you're doing some big exciting event in the school, invite them all to it, right? So if I'm doing a back to school night, I'm doing a belt graduation that's open for spectators, I'm doing a, parent night out, I'm doing,
That's a really good idea.
pick any number of things.
Pizza
That gives,
party or something.
yeah, that gives you a good excuse to invite them by direct mail, invite them by text, invite them by email, invite them by putting somebody on the phone, right? So, and when I say you should be emailing somebody every day, people stress out about that. But when you look at it, if I have like 3 internal events a month and I create a sequence for each type of event and I create it once, right? So, I create the back to school, the parents' night out thing and the movie night and the ninja day and the board breaking day and the nunchuck day and whatever. If I create that sequence once, all I do is when I do it every other month, I just plug that in and kick off you're invited to the glow chuck day and invite them all. And then it creates variety. And it's also that you're not just like every time you reach out, you're pitching them on coming in for lessons, right? Which is another good use. NAPNA really was founded, I don't know how many years ago now, but it was really kind of founded on a principle of sending people pre-done newspaper ads and pre-done newsletters. Well, for me, for my schools, I never saw the point of the newsletter for the existing students unless it was something that was letting them know about a special events and days were closed and that type of thing. But as far as doing a really nice, like monthly mail newsletter, it's really useful for 2 categories. It's really useful for inactive students to keep reminding them of all the cool things going on at the school and having them miss you. And it's really useful for all of your leads and prospects to really be beating on that. So, but going back to the back to school marketing is Stephen,
Pastor Oliver,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before you go on that, just to finish up on his other call, frequency of calls.
Yeah.
You want to do your live calls on the most frequent back rather than start a year from now. You're going to do the most recent leads that you have. And when you call them and you're doing a live call, make sure when you call, don't leave a message, but call back immediately right after that, because that's what happens with a lot of people. If they get one call, they might think it's spam, but if another one comes right after it, they might think it's important.
Yeah.
Then on the second one, leave the message of what you're saying. And then you're going
well, and a lot of them have their phone set up so it'll ring it if it rings the second time.
Yeah, we usually call twice, and then a couple hours later we call from a different number twice.
There you go. And when you leave your message, don't keep leaving a message unless it's a different number, but leave your message. But then if you call back even a day or 2 later, don't leave a message. So the message is there. They either got it or they didn't and didn't respond. But I still call them just to remind them, oh, that's the same people calling. I better call.
Yeah. And Paul and Dominica, I want to make sure we get to your thing too here pretty quick, but let's kind of finish off the back to school marketing checklist. Back to school is one of those times when you literally get out the marketing checklist, and we posted it everywhere over and over and over again, but you get out the marketing checklist and you do all of those things, right? Is if it's Facebook advertising, people are going to be more responsive right now, 2 weeks before the kids go back in school and the first 2 to 4 weeks after they go. I always considered it a 6-week window. The 2 weeks before, and a lot of times you don't get immediate response because they're going off on last minute vacations or something. But 2 weeks before, and then the the follow-up from through the 4 weeks after they go back to school. Sorry about that. Something was buzzing and I was trying to get rid of it. The but what I was going to say there is it's one of those times we want to do literally everything. They're going to be more responsive to the Facebook advertising, so you want a heavy back to school, promo on that. You're going to get a spike in Google searches because parents especially are looking for something for their kids to do for back to school. So you want to make sure SEO is in good shape, that you're buying all the clicks that you can get, that you're taking them to effective landing pages and so forth. And the next thing you want to do is you want to go through the checklist of all of the grassroots or the guerrilla marketing type of stuff. And, what is that list? Let's get a big banner on the front of the school. Let's get one of those big blow up balloons with a banner on it and put it on the school. Let's get those bandit signs out, so named because they're illegal, and let's get 100 of them out. Let's get 300 placements of rack cards out in all the merchants, with all of them with congruent look and feel, congruent offer, all about back to school, right? So let's
And
get
flag banners, those draw attention. Those should be by your center, where people see that.
yeah, flag banners, those big blow up kicker dudes. The thing that Gustavo posted in the group yesterday was fabulous. I hadn't seen one like that. He had, the guy with in a uniform, I think sparring gear even, holding up a sign, and the sign, was a blow up sign that says what the offer is, and then the offer was printed. That kind of stuff is perfect. So you want to get the blow up kicker dude, you want to get the flag signs out, you want to get big A-frame signs. Hell, with one of our locations, I managed to, do like an 8 foot by 4 foot banner that was right on the intersection, and I had it up there for a year before anybody yelled at me bad enough for me to pay attention. And so, all of that stuff you want to hit,
And,
but
Master Oliver, the schools really miss the advantage of, probably 90% of our schools are right on a major road that has so much traffic going by. And now those are your customers because they frequent that area. And you miss out on, such a low or no cost thing like banners or blow up signs or like Gustavo's thing. Don't miss the impact of that. I always, when I'm driving around, I'm always looking at different businesses from the road to see what kind of signage they have that pulls your attention. And I say, oh, that's something I haven't seen before because that caught my eye. And that's something we could use in the martial arts. And that's where we got the flag things. And that's where we got the blow up things because we saw, car dealers will put that big giant blow up thing on their thing and they'll have those flags with all the ribbons, flags that are the triangle flags. So anything that calls attention, even your bandit signs, 2 weeks, 2 blocks before your school, put a half a dozen of those. So they kind of lead up to that last flag sign. So they kind of see, oh, there's a martial arts thing, 2 weeks free. And and there's their location. And then you have even an A-frame sign showing that the arrow that you're actually located there in that center.
yeah, and again, what limits people sometimes is, oh, my landlord's gonna get mad at me, or the city or authorities are gonna get mad at me, or one thing or another. And of course, if you can go down to the city and get a banner permit and get a permit to have it up for a month or 2 months, go do it legally. My favorite story on one of many, I guess, but on entrepreneurship is we were doing exactly this. The concept was, all 5 schools have been a little slow, but we're always good at grand openings. Why don't we just do a grand opening for all of the schools? And one of the things we did is we did those big, they're not hot air, they're cold air balloons. They put the fan on, and then you put banners on. And I think it was like 12, 15 feet high, or maybe higher than that, and put it on the top of all the schools. And and I didn't know about, not that I didn't know about, I didn't pay any attention to permitting or anything. And usually those companies take care of that because it was one of those things that you rented for 6, 8 weeks. But the school that was actually where my headquarters office was, we put it up, and I wasn't there, and the city officials came in, and came in and told my branch manager that the balloon was illegal and the balloon had to come down and one thing or another. And so I get a call, in the car of, oh my goodness, this is illegal. And I went and unplugged the thing. I said, well, go plug it back in. Shut the fuck up. Don't be an idiot. Give me the business card when I get there. I'll deal with it. Right. And so I called the guy with the city when I got back, and I said, so and so who's the branch manager here, talk to you. Is there a problem with the balloon? He goes, oh yeah, you're not supposed to have that. I said, well, what permits do we need to file, or yeah, usually the company takes care of that, but what permit do we need? Well, no, in this city it's illegal. You just can't do it. Okay, you need to take it down immediately. I said, okay, well, given that's not going to happen, how does the process work? And, they're not used to being talked to like that. And I was being very nice. He was laughing. But he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what's next? Right. So if I just say it's not coming down, what do you do? He goes, oh, we'd come back and give you a formal warning. Okay. And then what happens? Well, if you don't take it down within, I forget what the time period was, we come and give you a summons. Okay, what's the summons for? It's for a court appearance. Okay. Well, how long does it take between the summons and the court appearance? And so it's going to be 48 hours to give me a warning. Then it's going to be a week to give me a summons, and then it's going to be 4 weeks for a court appearance. And I said, well, so if we go to the court appearance, what's going to happen? And he says, well, the judge is going to tell you you have to take it down. And I say, and if I don't take it down at that point, they'll probably fine you like $500 a day or something like that. Okay, yeah, no problem. Come bring me the warning. And he said, well, what? I said, well, I only rented it for 6 weeks. It's been up there for 3 weeks. So by the time, it'll be down long before I get to court date. And he said, well, okay, so it'll be down in 3 weeks. Yeah. Okay. No problem. And that was the end of it. Right. And by the way, the first part of the conversation, this is the old NLP training, is the guy says, we've had a lot of complaints and they have what they call the 5-finger pointers. I said, a lot? He goes, well, we've had a complaint. I said, oh, let me guess. It was, I forget his name, Chris Stevenson, the president of the homeowners association. He goes, oh yeah, you know him? Oh yeah, he complains about every fucking thing. Well, yeah, well, regardless, it is, so, that's the way the conversation went. But Stephen, the thing is, you want to pull out, the playbook and you want to do everything, right? So if there's a big Labor Day event in your area or 5, you want to do all of them, right? You don't want to get into 1 or 2 schools. You want to get into all of them. Now, you can certainly sort them by how many of them are what percentage free lunch and so forth, and target the ones that are 3-car garages on the golf course, and not target the ones that are in government subsidized housing. But I want to be in as many as possible with prioritizing by kids and income areas. But then I want to pull out all of the grassroots stuff. And again, I want to get flyers out door to door, door hangers door to door. I want to get A-frame signs on the street. I want the flag banners. I want the blow up guys going on. I want 300 or 400 placements with rack cards. So I want every Dairy Queen and dry cleaner and Domino's and everything in between to have
Door hangers.
Yeah.
I mean, hit them all. And remember, there's 3 1-hour videos in the Quick Start on that exact same thing. Master Oliver and I did the grassroots marketing, and those are all low cost. So for the schools that are rather new, that don't have enough money to do a lot of paid advertising.
Matt Smith, that's in that 6-week marketing course. That's in the Circle group.
Okay.
Yeah.